Okay, I'm looking at the Royal Commission questions, and I've gone through 1, 2, and 3, and I'm going to go through the rest a little quickly. Hopefully, all right. In this video, I'll get through the lot. These are offensive questions because they've been worded in such a way to wash out the existence of victims of psychiatrists. Even in the questionnaire where they ask who we are, we have to put other, because we're not going to identify with a vicious DSM slur. We're not going to identify with consuming something that kills and maims us. So the whole questionnaire is worded for the perpetrators so that they can just slot in their ideas and their buy-in for money for their bid for their company so that they can get the funds, and victims of psychiatrists can't receive justice. So we've got to get around these questions. Number 4 asks, what makes it hard for people to experience good mental health, and what can be done to improve this? This may include how people find, access, experience mental health treatment and support, and how services link with each other. Okay, the whole idea of mental health is linked to the Mental Health Association, which is a eugenics-based organisation. So to even use that term and talk about it being good, when forced psychiatry is done under the terms of the Mental Health Act, by force, which causes a person to be massively disabled and disfigured and just wrecks your life, and utterly painful, and does not help in any life circumstance. How is being arbitrarily detained and tortured good? Oh, well, it's good for the whitecoats because they make money out of it. Now, I'm not going to answer this as a whitecoat because I'm not a whitecoat. I have been a victim of psychiatrists for 14 years, but I'm free, so I'm not there anymore. So when I talk about it being offensive, we're talking about a question that is worded in such a way as not to allow us to easily answer it. We don't want to access mental health. We want the Mental Health Act abolished. Access to justice, to abolish forced psychiatry, to stop a forced order, that's what we want. But it's not worded in the question there. And, what makes it hard? Well, you have a system of forced psychiatry, and you have a government that says that's care, help, and benevolence, and you have a society that is indoctrinated by that propaganda. That makes it very difficult. And you do not want to improve what the whitecoats think is good mental health, because what they say is good mental health is them making a lot of money out of exploiting people for human research. And we don't want to find their human research studies. We don't want to go and be a laboratory specimen. We don't want to access that. Even though we say that the forced psychiatry is horrific, horrible, diabolical, this mental health treatment that is dished out, we are not listened to. So psychiatrists break us under torture until we say we're going to go along with us and keep quiet about how horrible it is. And when people speak out against it, what happens to them? They get vilified even more if they're still in the system. So it's a really horrible question, and we have to answer it in a way that's going to really tell them. The number 5 asks, what are the drivers behind some communities in Victoria experiencing poorer mental health outcomes, and what needs to be done to address this? Now, poorer mental health outcomes. Mental health, like when they say you have ill mental health or your mentality is ill, that's a vicious slur. That's an accusation that is used to assault a person. assault and batter a person, but in the Mental Health of Victoria Act of Victoria, it says a psychiatrist can't be charged with, the treating psychiatrist can't be charged with assault and battery, which is ridiculous because it's exactly what they do. So loopholes in the law. Drivers in the community, well, usually they pick on the disenfranchised, financially or socially. That's their target. So, and this is just term poorer. You know, they're always trying to, exploit people under, one regime and then exploit them under another regime. And you'll have the psychiatrists come in, and then the social workers will, come in with another industry where they'll want to, exploit those same people. They're being violently exploited, and then they want to say that they're disabled, people that need help. They're being disabled by the forced psychiatry. Okay, so I hope that addresses it, commissioners. I hope that, addresses your I was going to say word, but your offensive question. Yes. Okay, so number 6. What are the needs of family members and carers, and what can be done better to support them? All right. What about the needs of family and this term carers, right? That's a government term, the same as consumers, and it is actually quite offensive to use a term like that, because care is a very perverted word in Australia. When you're being tortured and told it's care, when the person who calls themselves your carer is actually your handler, and assisting the psychiatrists, not assisting you, that's just wrong. Yes, people have to sign forms and that so they can get some sort of support, but what needs to be done is to abolish forced psychiatry. And if a person actually is supporting somebody who's being put through forced psychiatry, then the best thing they can do is advocate for the abolition of forced psychiatry. Advocate for that person to be free from forced psychiatry. If they don't do that, they're not caring. And I'll have many of those trolls come to me on the internet, and they are trolls. Absolute trolls. They know what they've done to their people, or they don't. They're completely ignorant. They really don't care about the person at all. They just actually go along with things because that's what an authority said. Now, when people understand a person and listen to a person, then they wouldn't be doing that. They would not be forcing psychiatry on a person. And people die because they're being subjected to torture and being told it's care by the people closest to them. The people closest to them betraying them. That's just horrible. So when we're talking about carers, friends, family, excuse me, hello, victims of psychiatrists. That's what we should be talking about. And if friends and family members are allies to those people, then yes, they are supporting the people who are being put through forced psychiatry. This is not about people who at this stage, those people are irrelevant. Until you abolish forced psychiatry, you don't. That's all mixed up. That's all messed up. Anyway, let's go through this. We have number 7, offensive question from the commissioners is what can be done to attract, retain, and better support the mental health workforce, including peer support workers. You want me, as a victim of psychiatrist, to say how I would better support my perpetrators. I mean, get get some logic in your head. How offensive is that to ask me a question like that? I do not want to support psychiatrists. I do not want to support the psych nurses that hold people down and inject them. They make money out of exploiting people. Why would I want to support them? I don't even want to support those peer workers that are basically only employed because they're turncoats. Now, you want to show me a peer worker that is employed by our government, employed by the mental health system, that you say is not corrupted, and I'll just laugh at you. Because none of them actually are standing up for victims of psychiatrists. They're reinforcing the status quo of what white coat perpetrators want to do, which is keep exploiting victims of psychiatrists. Now, that's not a person I want to support, and it's not. They get enough support from the government through being employed, through being validated as exploiters, as if they should be allowed to continue that. What an offensive question. Number 8. What are the opportunities in the Victorian community for people living with mental illness to improve their social and economic participation, and what needs to be done to realise these opportunities? Now, here we go. Mental illness is a vicious DSM slur. Do not use it. What are you talking about? What are you talking about? Are you talking about how you can give opportunities to people who are being held down and injected and violated by psychiatrists? Or abolish for psychiatry first of all, then find out how much you've injured that person. Find out how they can, do they have a roof over their head? Do they, You cannot do anything until you abolish the regime, the government regime. Otherwise, every single, even the housing will be co-opted by the white coats. So you'll have some horrible handlers coming in and forcing people to take their drugs, or monitoring them, or giving the key to the white coats to do so. No. We want opportunities for people. We don't want people being assaulted by our government and told that's good for them. Arbitrary detention and torture is not something a democracy should be doing. We don't like it in dictatorships when that's done. I mean, you go, oh, horrible dictator, but that's what the Victorian Mental Health Act is. It's a dictatorship. It's an exploitation regime. And to say it is anything else is just not recognising how horrendously cruel and violent it is. Okay, thinking about Victoria's mental health system, what Victoria's mental health system should ideally look like. Tell us what areas and reform ideas you would like the Royal Commission to prioritise for change. Okay, so we're talking about change now, and you're talking about the Victorian mental health system. Well, when we're talking about reform, I don't want reform, I want abolition, because you can't reform a system that is so offensively violent. It's like saying, oh, let's reform the Nazis. I mean, they killed and maimed people. They used people for experiments. It's the same thing as the Victorians doing, except they're not overtly just saying, let's, kill these people. They're doing it in a way, they cover it up very well. But if you say psychiatrists don't know what they're doing, then you're trying to say that all their training as medical practitioners means they cannot tell when a person's being poisoned by the drug that they're forcing, and that they know nothing about what the drug causes, and that they can't even see when a person is suffering from tardive dyskinesia, and when they're twitching all over the place, they just ignore it. That's come on. Victoria is training psychiatrists to be like this. There's a system of training that's been going on so long, and the government puts 35% of vested interest in human research, and a lot of that is mental health. And then there's secondary human research, which is human research done through the psychiatric drugs cause things like diabetes, heart conditions, liver conditions, cancers, you name it. This is, of course, you put horrible, painful toxins into a person, you're going to cause disruptions to the human body and so forth. And even things like drooling, they experiment on, they cause drooling through a neuroleptic, and then they want to give a person a masking agent to try and stop that drooling and do a whole trial on that. How wrong? That's why it's just got to be abolished. You can't have a mental health system. You cannot have forced psychiatry. You've got to remove it, and then you've got to say, after it's been removed from each state and territory, and the government, the federal government has said, okay, we've got an abolition of forced psychiatry, no more of that. So the states and territories can't bring it back in. But then you've also got to think of criminalising aspects of psychiatry, so that, I don't know, some gullible parent can't bring along their child and have them tortured, or some parent that wants to control their child for whatever reasons that are unreasonable. So we'd also like those terms that are being used in these questions, which are offensive and that I'm pointing out are offensive, to be considered a hate crime to use. And that's down the track. I'm not going to be total on that one. We just want the government force, because to have a government that can come into your home and drag you off on a say from a psychiatrist that says that person's mentality is ill, and that person doesn't have the funds or the social connections to fight that, and then forcefully inject them and electrocute them and then break them under that torture until they agree to it. It's just that's just outrageous cruelty, and we're going to abolish it. So number 10, what can be done to prepare for changes to Victoria's mental health system and support improvements to last? So we're not talking just changes to Victoria's, we're talking abolition of Victoria's mental health system. Why? Because, as I explained before, it's diabolically cruel, and even those terms, those words that we have been attacked under are offensive because our bodies have been injured through the use of those terms. Does that make any sense? Through the use of those terms, our bodies have been injured. So when people use those words, our bodies feel and remember, because that's a sense memory of being assaulted most violently for 24/7 indefinitely, and having no means to escape, no access to justice, isolated, nothing, and being told this is good for us, and everything we try to do to stop it invalidated, even if it's reciting law and tempting that way. So supporting improvements to last, abolish forced psychiatry, and also make sure that the population understands why it's being abolished. So we've got to expose it first, and this is what the Royal Commission is for. Expose it, abolish, expose the violations, so the victims of psychiatrists get heard, victims of psychiatrists get validated. That means the abolition of forced psychiatry, because the people, once they know about it, they don't want it anymore. And then you gotta have reparations of some kind. So, apology very quickly, not just 40 years of, oh yeah, maybe, like they do with other exploitation rackets. We want it straight away because this has been going on so long. This is a group of people that have been attacked and vilified and victim blamed and conflated with the most horrendous violent criminals. Well, most of them even can't be charged with a crime because they haven't actually committed any kind of crime. They're just being accused of their mentality being ill, and whatever that means. And by the way, no one deserves forced human experimentation. No one. Not the vile, cruel kind that psychiatry dishes out. No one. Arbitrary detention. No one deserves that. So it's got to be exposed. It's got to be stopped. The forced psychiatry and the arbitrary detention on that basis, and then we've got to have a really good, solid conversation about that propaganda, and that's how I see that we're going to have some improvement in our society. Now, an improvement of Victoria's mental health system is an abolition of it. An improvement in our society it's a good conversation and understanding and quick and reparations for the people that have been exploited in that vile, cruel way. So that's usually takes the form of an apology. Now, a real apology and assurance that it's not going to happen again, and for whatever else we can possibly have as far as reparations to make sure that another system of exploitation doesn't pop up again. Okay, that's the questionnaire, and I'll finish that.